Everybody was gone, and I think we're all back. Is anybody missing? I believe we're all. What? Well, they don't sit on the front row. It's good to see all of you. I made the mistake of letting my wife know I was going to preach this sermon. And so this is about a 5-hour sermon. She's added to it here and there. She came in this morning and said, say this and this and this and this. And I said, Gloria, I've only got about 30 minutes. Try to remember that. But I do appreciate her insights here and there. We're going to draw this lesson from a simple passage in Proverbs 30. I wish I had a lot of time to talk about some of the elements of Proverbs 30. But I'm going to look at these 4 wonderful things. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, the way of a man with a maid. This passage is not as simple as it looks like. Just saying, well, I've seen birds fly, no big deal. But do you know the way of an eagle in the air? Why he flies, where he does, where he goes, the path that he follows? No, I don't know that. It's a mystery to me. Somebody's tried to explain to me a time or two how he manages to fly. But where and why and how he goes, I don't know. It's his reasoning, his thoughts, I don't understand. And have you ever seen a snake on a sunny day taking the sun out on a rock? You know, you get a little too close to him and he'll slink down some hole somewhere in between the rocks, and you won't see him or know where he goes or where he comes up. He's about as afraid of you as you are of him. The mysteries of how that snake works are astounding. But in addition, and I've seen this, the way of a ship in the sea. You know, you can see a boat from the shore, and a lot of people like that, boating. They like to be able to see the shore. I can swim over there if I really had to, or if the boat were sinking, I can race that thing over there and ground it on the shore and get ashore. But out in the deep ocean, you see that ship and you don't know, after it passes 5 minutes later, there's no track, there's no indication. Lines and stuff aren't on the map, aren't on the ocean. And so the way of a ship in the sea. But I didn't want to talk about all of those. I want to talk about the one that's the greatest mystery. It's a fascinating thing. We don't understand it. The man with the Ethan on the border. But the rest of you kids who thought you'd graduated from the front row, this lesson's for you. You know, it's an amazing thing. I kid all of you and ask you, I go around and ask nearly every one of you, if you found true love yet or not. You all go, oh no, I wouldn't even look at a woman, which you're lying about. But anyway, we know better than that. But to watch that, the interplay, how it happens that two people manage to find one another and grow together is an amazing thing. It's as hard to track that and understand that. You know, as parents, we all pick out mates for our children. And sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't work. We try to go, what in the world? How did she wind up with that lame guy over there? Or in case you've got a son, how did he wind up with that woman? That's not the one I would have picked out for him. And we wonder, how did this happen? The way of a man with a maid, the mysteries of it are an amazing thing. Look at that girl right there, twirling her hair in that picture. The very idea. And they're both looking at one another. You know, 3 years after this picture was made, if they happen to find true love and get married, you ever looked at a restaurant? They never look at one another. She'll never twirl her hair again. She'll throw it back around quite a bit. But anyway, the way of a man with a maid, and the way of a maid with a man, for that matter. There are certain things that you need to learn about, you young people who are beginning to broaden out. First of all, you need to exercise in your relationship with boys and with girls. You need to exercise a purity of life. Boy, I'll tell you the truth. I searched for these pictures, of course, on the internet. And if you put in the search keywords, young love, oh my goodness, I began to worry that somebody was going to turn me in for sexual deviancy. My goodness, what passes for the definition, a pictorial definition of young love is almost incredible these days. So young people, you're going to have to pay attention, because what the world around you is telling you about love in your youth, it might not be the best advice. In Titus 2, in verses 1 through 8, speak thou the things which become sound doctrine, that aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith, in charity, and patience. The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. Young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded. Boy, that is so hard when you're young, to be sober-minded. It's a real struggle. You have to learn that. You weren't born with it. To be giddy, silly, to make a fool of yourself, it's so easy when you're a young man. But he says, young men exhort to be sober-minded, in all things showing thyself a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity, sound speech that cannot be condemned. Boy, the world around you is filthy, has filthy speech. You need to have sound speech that can't be condemned. And that might be a struggle with all the influences around you. That he that is of the contrary part, those evil people, may be ashamed, having no evil thing to say of you. So that when all those wild and reckless young men that you associate with would have to say, hey, Jason here's a good man. I've never heard him say or do anything wrong or bad. I've seen him behave himself around his girlfriend. You have a girlfriend, Jason? Jason? Remember, we're at church. You need to have a good reputation. Behave yourself. You might notice another passage in 1 Timothy 5. How do I behave toward this young woman? He says, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren. I'll have to say this about our Spanish brethren and Spanish men in general. I have never, and I've worked with a lot of Spanish men, I have never seen one of them speak sharply or disrespectfully to an older man. Never. I've not seen the same thing out of a lot of American men. And I don't mean to say that our Spanish brethren aren't Americans, but I don't know the way to say that about our generation of people. Speak respectfully to older folks and treat younger men as brethren. The elder women as mothers. How do you want somebody to talk to your mother? To address her? And how would I treat this young woman I'd like to have as a girlfriend? And the younger women as sisters with all purity. That's not the way the world looks at it. Trust me. I've seen the internet. In 1 Timothy 4 and verse 12, let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, and lastly, in purity. Behave yourself. Behave yourself. We'll talk some more about that. The Bible contains a number of warnings to young men. I don't have time to read everything I stuck in my notes. I just don't. And so I'm going to look at one. This is in Proverbs, the 2nd chapter, beginning at verse 1. And it begins to read something like the passage in chapter 3 that Matt read to you a minute ago. He says, my son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge and liftest up thy voice with understanding, if thou seekest her as silver and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness and judgment and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee. I have employed, in the course of our business, we have a large number of young men, teenagers in their 20s. And it has been incredible to me as I interview these young men to realize what a shambles so many of them have made of their life when they were teenagers. A shambles. They have children that somebody else is raising. Large amounts of money being taken from what little pay they can earn to support their children or not support their children, as the case may be, but it's the law. They have gotten themselves attached to someone who makes their life miserable. Because they got attached in a union that was inappropriate and foolish because their lusts were out of control. And they ruined their life before they were 20 years old, and will bear the pain of that ruin for years to come. We think we can take easy ways out, abortion, ignoring the woman. And it doesn't work. It ruins our lives. It rots our hearts. It distracts us from any real goal. It makes it difficult for us to get an education. Lo and behold, some of these people got themselves in jail, in trouble with the law. They lost their license. They thought it was real sharp to drive too fast, to drive without insurance, to drive without a license. And now here they are in their early 20s looking for a job, and they are not fit for anything but simple labor. They can't go anywhere from it. And so this passage pleads with you to use wisdom, to learn wisdom as a young man. Read on just a little bit further in the same section to verse 16. He says his intention is to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words. Now here you are, a young man, and you're not smart enough to tell when somebody's flattering. Or you're a young woman and you're not smart enough to realize that just because he tells you how pretty you are and how much he loves you, sometimes that just doesn't last. Flattereth with her words, who forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. You can always change these pronouns. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. Think what you're doing. You are about to enter into a period of great desire. Your desire is to be free of your parents. You're beginning to ponder what you're going to do in life and the direction you're going to take and who's going to accompany you in that. Use some wisdom. Now, I wish I could read so many more of these sections here in Proverbs, but I promised myself I would contain this sermon to, and if I get into any of those books, any of those other here, I'm going to back up a little bit. If you get a chance, you can write them down. They're all in those first 8 chapters. Just read the first 8 chapters. They're all dedicated to young men, young women, and pleading that you would not louse up your life before you've got good sense. Get wisdom first. Slow down a little. Enjoy yourself. There's a number, but I want to move on. The Bible isn't saying you have to be miserable. Did you know that? The Lord wanted you to enjoy your youth. What a wonderful time. What a wonderful period. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth. And walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things, God will bring thee into judgment. He wants you to have a wonderful time, but God is aware of you, and there will be a judgment. He says, therefore, remove sorrow from thy heart. You don't have to go around sad sacking it. You don't have to be miserable. Enjoy it. Remove sorrow from thy heart. Put away evil from thy flesh. For childhood and youth are vanity. It's going to pass pretty fast. You enjoy it. Look back on it as one of the most happy periods of your life. For it will be. If you'll use some wisdom, if you'll remember God, if you'll put away evil from your life. The world isn't telling you that. The world's telling you there is no God. The world's telling you that evil is the thing everybody's doing. And that you need to hurry up and get involved. You don't. Enjoy yourself. Have fun. Notice a couple of other passages. Proverbs 18 and verse 22. It says, whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of the Lord. But it also has a little warning in Proverbs 25. It says it's better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman and in a wide house. Oh, she smiles and twirls her hair at you now, but there'll come a time when you'll wish you were hidden in a closet somewhere, and vice versa. It's better to not be married than to be linked up to an abusive, drunken, hateful husband. But let's move on and see if I can get this thing. Come on. One of the things you've got to think about, and this is so hard to do, we watch all these movies. Ava, put your hand out. We watch all these movies, and they paint such a bright, wonderful future in front of us. Well, it's not always bright and wonderful. And so you need to do a little bit of thinking at an early age. Jonathan, Jason, Raymond, Carol. Who else can I get in on that? I'm missing a couple of kids. You need to do a little bit of thinking beyond today. Beyond today. Hey, we're having fun today. She's wonderful. She's beautiful. Life's good. And he's handsome. Today. But think a little bit beyond. How will you live? Have you thought about that? You're staying in mom and dad's house right now. But sooner or later, it's going to get crowded. They may want you out of there. And you need to think about, how am I going to live? In Proverbs 6, go to the ant's house, sluggard. Look around. Consider her ways and be wise. Who having no guide, mama didn't have to tell him to do anything. Overseer or ruler provideth her meat in the summer, gathereth food in the harvest. How long will you sleep? Young people, do y'all leap out of bed at 6 in the morning? No. How late do you sleep on Saturday, Jason? 9. Okay. I have sons who tried to sleep till 11, or thought they could, till I poured cold water on them, till late in the day. But the aunt gets up early, and she does it at the appropriate time. How long will you sleep? When you get married, there's no more of that sleeping late stuff. You got a job. I got to get to work. I got to go fight the traffic, get to work, make the money to support myself. But here you're saying, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. Girls, you do not want to marry this guy. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want is an armed man. I remember, and you probably have all heard this. You probably have all heard this, so it's an old joke. But the preacher came, and his intention was to preach to them about the importance of this sort of thing. He said, now I know it's important to get an education. You girls, you go out and look for that guy, and you want to know if he has those initials after his name. So he's got a BS. He says, well, Don't be too impressed with that, because you can find a lot of that in any barnyard. And he said maybe he's got an MS. Just remember, girls, that's just more of the same. But he might have, and you're terribly impressed, he might have a PhD. He said, that's just piled hip deep. He said, what you want to know is, has he got a JOB? You're going to need a JOB that'll support you. And you might sit down with mom and dad and say, Mom, Dad, how much money does it take to operate this outfit? And I will guarantee you'll be surprised. And you'll think, it may be a while before I can support everything. You might notice 2 Thessalonians 3, even when we were with you this week commanded you, if any would not work, neither should he eat. We hear that there are some which walk among you disorderly, working not at all, but are busybodies. Them that are such we command and exhort by our Lord Jesus Christ, with quietness they work and eat their own bread. Get a job, shut up, go to work. Go to work every day, appear on time, work till closing time. I can't tell you the number of young American men who can't do that. They won't show up every day, they won't be on time, and they won't stick with it. Get married to one of those guys. See how that works out for you. Ladies, you will be struggling to support the family before long. You might notice Philippians 4. I know both how to abase and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I'm instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. Can you go through the hard times? Can that young lady you want to squire around and get married to, can she deal with hard times, not money, not buying a new dress every couple of weeks, not getting on Amazon and buying everything she wants, eating rice and beans fairly regularly so you can maybe make the bills? There's the kind of woman you want to pay attention to. Well, are we willing to work through those difficult times? Look at, I already read Philippians 12. We'll move on. Is she a Christian? Is he a Christian? Boy, that's an important thing. Oh, they're pretty. I know that. Maybe they're smart. Maybe they're handsome. Are they Christians? 2 Corinthians says, be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. Have you thought about what kind of a relationship you're going to have? You know, all that time you're sitting there grinning at one another and being romantic, and she's twirling her hair and you're smiling and feeling so good. Could you talk about the Lord just a little bit and see whether or not you can find some common ground? See whether or not he or she will listen to you. He says, what concord hath Christ with Belial? What part hath he that believeth with an infidel? What agreement hath the temple of God with idols? You're the temple of the living God. Come ye out, from verse 17, come ye out from among them, and be ye separate. Touch not the unclean thing. Do you both have a right to be married? I've seen a lot of young men who would glom on to some woman, and she'd already been divorced. Have you asked her why she got a divorce? You might listen up, pay attention. Why did she get a divorce? Well, my husband wouldn't let me do everything I wanted to do. She won't say that, but if you'll listen carefully, it's in between the lines. My husband yelled at me. Believe me, you will too one of these days. Think about that. And she didn't have a right. You know, Matthew 19. I'm just going to skip down to verse 9 for time's sake. Whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery. Now, are you so attached that you haven't got sense enough to ask why whether you were married before, and why did you get that divorce? If it was because my wife burned the biscuits or yelled at me, then you need to think that's not fornication. And you'll be committing the sin of adultery. Is there some basis to your relationship besides romance? Because let's have a show of hands. All of you married people, are there times in your life where romance doesn't figure in? Could you raise your hand? Yes. They all raise their hands back there. There's a lot of times when it's just up early in the morning and grumpy at one another. Let's get breakfast and get out of here if we've got time for that. Proverbs 31. Who can find a virtuous woman? Her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her. He shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. There's other things besides romance. Is she going to be a help to you in life? Or is she going to be a drug? Have you sought some advice about this? I know you think your parents don't have any sense, but you might ask your folks, you've met Sally. What do you think of her? What do you think of her? You've met Bill? Oh. What do you think of him? Oh, my goodness. You might ask your parents. You might ask the elders of the church, because you did bring him to church some, didn't you? And they got to know him. 1 Corinthians 7. I want you to notice this. Your parents should have something to say about their daughter marrying. In 1 Corinthians 7, if any man thinketh that he behaveth himself unseemly toward his virgin daughter, if she be past the flower of her age, and it need so require, let him do what he will, he sinneth not, let them marry. This was for a period of difficulty. But the point of the passage I want you to see is that parents had some choice as to whether there should be a marriage. Some wisdom in this. You need to talk to your folks and see what they think of this. They want you to get married. They want you to have a family. They want grandkids. They don't want you to be miserable because they love you. And they're going to look out for you as best they can. And they want to see that boy and know that he's got some sense, know that he's a good young man, that he has one of those JOBs, or that he'll get one whenever he needs it, and take care of my daughter. Or vice versa. You need to think for the long haul. Marriage is for life. Romans 7. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. The woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he liveth. I bought a couple of houses. And it just makes me terribly nervous every time I buy a house. You get that 30-year mortgage. And, if you've got any sense when you get that mortgage, you sit down and say, okay, I'm 25. I'll make it easy on me. I'm 30 years old now. A 30-year mortgage. I'll be 60 when I get this thing paid off. 60! That seems a long time, doesn't it? Makes you nervous, makes your hands shake. You got that stack of papers, makes your hands shake. Your marriage is for life. Now I'm going to do something. I got time. I'm going to do this. I want to know from these people in this audience how long you were married or have been married. Some of you, you've lost your mate. Is there anybody in this crowd who was married 70 years? I don't think so. Anybody here who was married 60 years? Okay, there's one, two. Delcy, hold your hand up back there. There's 60 years. 60, say that. 60. How old are you now? 15. How old will you be in 60 years? Pretty old, huh? That's nearly as old as me. Long time. Is anybody here who was married 50 years? Let's get them all. There's one back there. There's a 50-year. There's a 50-year. There's a 50-year. Whew, I've been married 50 years. And such a lovely young woman. How about 40? Okay, 1, 2. Some of you are not holding up your hands. How about 30? There's one back there. 2, 3, yes, 4. How about 20? Come on, some of you youngsters, start holding your hand up. 20. How old will you be in 20 years? 35. How many? How about 10? We'll go down to 10. Some of you youngsters. There we go. There you go. You'd be 25, which is about the time you might begin to think about getting married. All right. All the rest of you we'll lump in as young people. It's for life. 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter, verse 39. A wife is bound for so long time as her husband lives. If the husband is dead, she's free. You need to think about children. You know, you got this romance thing, you got that intimacy thing going. You know what that's all about? It's all about having kids. Now, Raymond, I saw your nephew there playing with you, sticking his finger in your eye just a minute ago. And you've probably watched him get his diaper changed several times, make a mess, misbehave. Think about that going on every day of your life for 20 years. That's what marriage is all about. That's what that relationship you're looking at. You think, oh, it's all about her twirling her hair and thinking how handsome I am. Oh, no, it's not. You look for the long haul. It's about children. And raising kids is not for young people. You're going to have to put a little muscle in this. You're going to have to grow up a little bit and get smart and get a job, and it's tough. It's not always pleasant. And you know what's worse? They grow up to be your age. Oh, my goodness. Then you have to deal with Jonathan and Jason and Raymond and all the rest of you. You got teenagers. They're terrible. Stuff when they were little and changing their diapers was the easy part. You could make them do nearly anything you wanted them to. Ephesians 6. Ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. Bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. That's on you then. It's not on you right now. You better make sure you've got a good mate that can help you. What about your relationship with God? You know, in 1 Peter 3, ye husbands dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. This is a partnership. It's going to affect your whole life. You need to be certain about it. Are you here this morning and not a Christian? There isn't anybody in here that doesn't want you young people to be happy. We want to rejoice at your wedding. We want to rejoice when we see you with children. And if we live long enough, we want to see them begin to grow up. That'll make us extremely happy every one of us, your parents and all of us, a lot of it is going to start with your being a Christian. The angels will rejoice at that time because you've started off on that day. Believing that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, will you repent of your sins, confess Him, come and be baptized? Start off on life's path. It seems like a long way, but it's not. My wife and I have been married over 50 years. Bob and Ruth over there, over 60. It seems like it went by so fast. It went by so fast. This is just a little bit, but it's an important bit. It's preparing us for something. Are you ready to start? Start with being a Christian. Come while we stand and sing.